Hey guys, it's TTL back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Rampage V Edition 10. Now they call it the Edition 10 because it's the 10th anniversary of Republic of Gamers, or ROG, however you'd like to pronounce it, all means the same sort of thing. Now this is just going to be a preview stroke kind of like, whereas other box openings might be vegetarian, this is a full fat one with meat and vegetables and meaty gravy and all that type of stuff. So we're going to go into a fair bit of detail, as much as I can do. Anyway, and I'll give you my thoughts about a lot of the stuff that's going on with the board as well. Just to let you know, the main review will be getting done probably within the next couple of weeks. I'm just waiting on a more finalised BIOS because they don't even know when this is going to be getting launched yet. And the BIOS that I've been given is very like pre-release. So to try and give it the best possible chance, I'm going to wait until we've had an update on their website and we've got a retail BIOS that I can use that is more finalised. Because with a lot of my testing, I'm going to need the stability, the QVL for the memory list to be quite long and meaty, because at the moment all of the brands are having problem with memory QVL because of the changes with broadwell-e getting rolled in. So there's a lot of that going on at the moment. So rather than me keep this in bed with me, in quiet, hidden, I thought I would share. So sit back, get comfy, get a nice hot brew on the go, and we will get the box open. One thing we can see straight away with the box is there's a lot of orange on it again, because Asus have been phasing out that kind of generic red that everyone's going has been kind of like putting on everything, which I'm personally one of the people that I'm not particularly a fan of the orange, if I must admit, but some of you are. But luckily when we get inside the box you'll see that it's pretty much, that's all the orange that you have to see. But with the box, normally with an Asus motherboard box, it always kind of felt like a graphics card box in the way that you opened it. But this one is, it's just packaging, but it is slightly more special in the fact that it goes back and opens like that. And I'd literally have to move the camera back miles if I was going to have it in full view for you all the time. Now we do get a first cheeky, maybe upskirt look at the board, and it is actually quite heavy, especially when you've got this plastic cover on the top. But I'm going to keep the suspense, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, because we do need to go through the box first, really, and just go through it, because to be honest with you, there's always a lot going on when it comes to these. So let's get the camera shifted a little bit, and we can have a look. Right, so we will get down to one box. It's like Chinese dolls, Russian dolls, that's it, Russian ones. Yeah, we prefer Russian ones, don't we? Yes, of course we do. Right, so we'll go through it, and I'm going to launch the stuff into the other box. Now, this is a CPU fitting tool. Now, I have to admit, I know how to fit a CPU, but this confuses me. But they seem to be using it more and more, but I'm not a fan. Never was when they first showed it to me. There's another one. Right, so this is your Wi-Fi dongle. Now, if you're wondering why some of this stuff is opened, it's because I've already had it open for pictures. And I need the pictures because if you click the link underneath, you can go to the written preview on the OC3D website, because obviously I have a website as well as the YouTube channel. But anyway, so here is our our Wi-Fi dongle. Now it's dual Wi-Fi, so you've got 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and then you've also got support for Bluetooth 4 as well, and that's your triple connectors. But yes, that is, and it's magnetic as well. So if you've got a steel case, it will stick to the steel case. This, I think, is amazing. Now this is such a simple thing, and I can't believe it's not been done sooner. You're like, oh yes, it's a box with a ROG logo on it. But then when we go around the back, yes, we've finally got a USB stick with all the utilities on rather than the useless CDs. Yeah, baby. So now all your drivers and stuff come on there. Lovely. Hope they do that with everything from now on in. This is your fan hub. You have a power from a Molex down here. This is the input. So this is the one that connects to the motherboard, and then you can kind of use it with all the other ones to control it. And you've got 1, 2, 3 outputs on it, but then you've also got 1, 2, 3 temperature probes that you can output on it as well. So that is all quite cool, I think. This is the thing that I can never get enough of, and you've got, oh no, it's not, that's for your Wi-Fi dongle thing at the back. I thought it was your M.2 slots. This is the expansion for down at the bottom. This is so that you can put all of your cables for your front panel headers and your LEDs and stuff on this, and it makes it easier to get them on the motherboard, and it can save a lot of time. SLI bridges, don't forget, this is the one that's not really very good for a lot of stuff. Your flexible one, you know, 4K, they actually say you shouldn't be using this. You do have these ones, but the way that I've had it worded to me is, as we've covered with the difference between the high bandwidth bridges in the past, is that the LED ones, so like you can get branded ROG ones like this, that are good for anything up to surround gaming and 5K onwards. So for argument's sake, this is good for up to 4K gaming, single screen 4K gaming. This is good. This is cool. This is what NVIDIA would suggest. But when you go beyond 4K, which includes surround, then you need the high bandwidth bridge. And that's a direct thing from NVIDIA. So this is good for most stuff unless you is well rich. These ones, kind of, they're all right for 1440. You're pushing it with 4K, and you know, you kind of want to switch. But to be honest with you, a lot of us kind of want something that looks pretty anyway, although you can modify those. But anyway, right, so we have an awful lot of SATA cables, but you'll understand why they've sent you so many SATA cables when you see all the connections on the box. This will make sense later on as well. This is your I/O backplate shield, and it's pretty much just a frame, right? This is a USB extension. We'll explain that in a minute because that's part of this. This is the cable for your fan extender, which I showed you. You get a couple of coasters or frisbees to fling at people. I actually did let go of it. Frisbees to fling at people. Then you've got your manual, which doesn't have the driver disc in it anymore, but then inside you have your stickers for your fans. These are so you can put them on your fans, like with the bits that you see. Either cover up the back of the fan, depending on which way round you've got them mounted, or you can have them on the front so that you can see the logo spinning around. And then these are so that you can name your cables, and you know, so you know what they're for, and all that kind of mumbo jumbo. Oh, and your keybot stickers as well, because keybot's quite a cool thing that they do, where you can actually use the keybot software to assign certain like F numbers on your PC to do shortcuts and stuff, which is all quite cool. It's definitely something that I'm not going to be covering in the video, keybot wise. It's not a new thing, it's quite cool. Definitely have a look at it in the software. Then you've got your thermal probes that I said to you about for the fan thingy that I showed you, the fan PCB, the fan extension. These are thermal probes for that, so they all come with that. This is an extension cable for an RGB cable. This will all make sense when we start talking about RGB actually on the motherboard in a minute, because it does have the onboard output. And this is your DAC. It's the Supreme FX Hi-Fi USB DAC stroke amp. And when I showed you the connector before for the USB, that was what it was. So that extension cable was for that. You do need to put a 6-pin PCI Express in it as well. But this is a ESS ES91018 or 18K 2M Sabre DAC. And there's lots of stuff going on in this. We're talking about LM4562 op amps and the RC4580. So there's a lot going on with this. I will pop the specs up for you so that you can have a look. But essentially the idea with this is it goes in your optical bay at the front. Now I will say that I'm not a fan of optical bays. So you're going to need a case that's got one. And you're also going to want to have this at the front of your case. But connection wise, you've got a 6.3mm headphone jack for all of those of you out there that have got like big audiophile style headphones. But you do get the 3.5mm headphone jack as well. You've also got a 3.5mm mic stroke line in jack if you want to use it. You've got an infinite scroll volume wheel on it and stuff. Do you know what I mean? You can see all the specs on what I said to you about it before. This would be something that if I bought the board, I probably wouldn't use. But if you're a headphone monkey or you like gaming with cans and you don't want to pay for like a different style external DAC, because let's face it, they can be quite expensive, then this could be perfect for you. But it's obviously going to be user specific. Okay, so there is an awful lot going on with this board, but what I will do is I will explain as best as I can and show you around the board with the camera where it is at the moment, and then I'll pick it up and I'll give you some close-ups so that we can get a better look. Now there is a lot of lighting going on with the board, and the lighting through the Aura software is where all of the colour changes come from. You can see really it is the Rampage 5 Black Edition. It follows that kind of theme, but they've got rid of all the colour on the board now. And rather than it being a special edition, I'm kind of hoping this is the way that they're going to go forward with it. The RGBs, you can change the colours to what you want, or you can have them off. If you do have them off, you can see that you do get this kind of really lush mirrored effect going on. And this is followed through up here as well. I'm trying to show you so that you can see the reflection. And there is also a bit up here that lights up as well. Just to kind of chuck a curveball in it, they've actually got RGBs on the backplate now, which again I will show you in a minute. But we'll talk about the specs and stuff going around. Now it has got the overclock socket. Asus overclock socket. It's slightly different to the Intel one. Intel one has got 2011 pins, Asus one's got 2036. They added a few more in. It gives them some better control really with memory, but what it does with the memory is it does allow better overclocking, but it drastically reduces the volts that it needs the memory to have to be able to run. Now I have noticed this a great deal. So for argument's sake, 3200 megahertz memory without the overclock. With the system agent voltage, for example, you could be looking at 1.25 volts. But something like this, you might be looking at 1.1, maybe 1.0. Same with things like the VCCIO. The voltages for the memory supporting volts, because of the overclock socket, are drastically reduced. It's something that I've been paying specific attention to with the new generations of boards, and I am working really hard to try and build up enough information to really kind of fluff that out for you and beef that out for you in the reviews. We're just waiting for the BIOS to get slightly more mature, and for the other brands to stop moaning at me for looking at it. We'll work our way around. So we've got 8 slots of memory in total. Just to let you know, when you put your first 4 sticks of memory in, use the grey ones. Now I know I'm preaching to the converted, and most of you know, but you'd be amazed how many times on the forums we get people moaning that their board won't post because they're in the black slots. But anyway, at the top we have an 8-pin CPU power. Then we've also got an additional 4 for if you're mentalist and you need all that extra power. What we will do is we'll talk about all the different fans and stuff as well. Now we've got, this is your CPU fan up here, and then we've got your CPU optional fan up here. So for argument's sake, if you've got a dual tower cooler, then you could plug that in there. And if your AIO, so your water cooler, didn't have any built-in fan pumps, you could obviously, fan headers, you could use these 2 up here. We've got 2 lots of dip switches. And now I like this a lot. We've got, and don't forget I said I will show you around. In fact, let's just do it. We'll just do it the good old-fashioned way. Good old-fashioned way with a modern, let's try it twist. Right, so you've got CPU optional up here, and then your normal CPU fan here. You've got dip switches here. Now I really like this second set of dip switches, because you've got 1 set of dip switches so that you can disable PCI Express lanes on the motherboard. So if you had, for example, 2 graphics cards, water cooled or being frozen if you were an overclocker, because you know a lot of overclockers are going to end up using this board, frozen because you're an overclocker and you can't disable, or you can't take it out, and you think you're getting blue screens and it's failing because it won't post, and you think one of your graphics cards is at fault. Maybe your PCI poster that's here is basically giving you a PCI Express error. Well, you can actually turn that lane off to see if you can get it to post. This isn't a new feature at all. I've used this in the past in reviews and stuff, and it has actually got even me out of stress. So if you've got full water-cooled rig and stuff like that, and maybe one of your graphics cards has died, this is going to be able to get your system running again without having to dismantle it all. But what they've done now is you've now got one for your memory as well. A lot of people are water cooling their memory. I would like to think that they've done it for aesthetics, because they certainly don't need water cooling, but sometimes it does look nice. So you can now dip them off and basically, yeah, you can turn them off, and then the system might post again. Buttons. Start button. It's nice that it's not red, because obviously we've got no red on the board now. Reset button. Then we've got slow mode. This is to do with sort of like mega fast overclocking when you're sub-zero and all stuff like that. You've got your memo OK button, which can help get your memory to post if you're having issues. We've got a safe boot button here. The retry button is sometimes when you turn your system on, it kind of it hangs, and then this is literally, it just goes, rather than pressing reset, it literally is a please just try that again with all the same settings and everything else. And I did find with the period of overclocking on the old Rampage 5 that sometimes when you were squeezing the last little bit out, this it would hang on the boot, and then you tap this and it would boot again fine the next time. They fixed it with a BIOS update, but this can be incredibly helpful. We've got some pinouts down the side here that you can't see, but these are just so that you can get your voltage and tester and all that kind of stuff on these, so you can get very specific voltages out of these pinouts down the side. It's obviously your 24-pin power supply connector here, but then on these two as well, what we've also got is this is your high amp fan. Now there are that you can get hold of very, very high RPM fans now that draw an awful lot of power. Deltas, some server style fans, yada yada yada. Well, you can plug one of these in now, and this will give you up to 3 amps safely, and you won't overload anything on the board. The one underneath is your water pump connector. Now, with the high amp fan, there are some extra additions in the BIOS now and in the software, in that you can go into an extreme low spin mode. And they're saying that they've got a completely separate chip now for the fan control, and they're saying it's the best fan control that they've ever done, and that's available full stop. Now, I will be looking at this in the main review, and I will give it a test, and I've got some silly RPM fans and drawing fans as well, so we'll see how much we can step them down. So this could be interesting, and it's quite near the old CPU socket as well. So for argument's sake, if you were running a Noctua super duper turbo server fan, and I reckon you'd probably be able to get the cable around and hide it quite tidily. When we come down a bit further, we have an enormous mount for M.2s, because we have got the ability of them getting bigger. This one is 2210, and then we've got 2280, 2260, so 60, 80, 110. We might be getting some like 1 terabyte M.2s later on, and then hopefully at some point the 3D memory's going to start coming in, and then we might see them getting smaller again, but still we've got a nice long M.2. It's not got the retarded vertical mount that the Deluxe does, and it's also not taking up any space in between these, and you can see all the electrical components that we've got between the PCI Express connectors on here. But it's not the only drive that you can have connected, because you've also got a total of 10 SATA 6 gigabit a second ports and a U.2, which is why you had all of the connectors that I showed you in the box beforehand. And then when we come down here, you've got an SLI stroke Crossfire X, and that's you've got a button that you can switch between 2 and 3 times. This is kind of a normal thing with the Asus boards. You've got a BIOS switch that you can switch between the different BIOSes. You've got some thermal sensors on the board, and there are a few other ones scattered around as well, so you can use those thermal sensors that we had in the box, and you can also use them on the board itself. This is your external fan header that I showed you as well, with the add-on card that you can have in the back. We've got a second USB 3 down the bottom. We've only got one USB 2 output, which you may need to go careful of if you're running, for argument's sake, a H100i V2 and an RMI power supply. We need you need USB 2s to plug it into. You might end up needing to get the Corsair hub. So this is something that I still have a use for 2 USB 2s, maybe even 3 sometimes, to be honest, if you want to use them on the front of the case, but if you don't anyway. So you've only got 1, so just keep that in mind. Might be a problem. If not, it's a simple fix. Then you've got 2 more fan headers down here. This is your RGB connector down the bottom, and that's so that you can run external RGB strips. That also means that you can link it up with the motherboard as you want, or you don't have to. In the software, you have a choice where you can have it all matching the motherboard, or you can set it to a totally different color scheme if you want a 2-stage color scheme if you want, or you want your motherboard red and you want everything outside white, then that's all doable. And then right down the other end here, what we've got is your 2 BIOS chips here, so you can have 2 totally separate BIOS chips. You can also be running 2 separate BIOS if one's better for an overclock and one's better for stability, and it's quite a simple switch with the BIOS switch that I showed you before. And then if you are running full-on Mentalist, like big stacks of graphics cards, then you can add this Molex connector in, and it gives you a bit of extra juice for the PCI Express. For the average user, I would say do not connect this. You do not need to. All it's going to do is add unnecessary mess in the in your system, and do you know what I mean? It's just another cable that you've got to run that you don't particularly need to have. Then when we get to talk about the all the audio down this side, the Supreme FX and all that type of stuff, just Supreme FX shielding. It's got dual op amps, premium Nikon audiophile grade capacitors. It's got the Realtek ALC 1150 HD audio, and it's the highest signal to noise radio HD codec in the industry. Then you've got left-right channel track separation that's hidden underneath, and then you've got a stainless steel EMI protection cover hidden underneath there as well. But I said to you about the I/O plate stroke backplate frame is what I wanted to call it, and that's because it's got a patent pending backplate, and it's an all-in-one one, so it's kind of there with you already, and they say it helps them to be able to give it extra stability and yada yada yada, you know the PR spiel, but looks pretty and means in the long run that you don't have to mess around. And let's face it, I know most of you out there, if you've had more than one motherboard or you've bought second-hand motherboards, this can get lost or you don't get it. But anyway, so more stuff around the back. We've got 3 USB 3s, and then we've got the equivalent of 4 USB 3.1s, but you've got 2 A's and 2 C's. So you've got plenty of connection ability there. You've got 2 USB 2s down here, but this is your keyboard one, which obviously means you can assign some of your F buttons on the keyboard to do different functions, all through Asus software, which is quite cool. And then the USB BIOS flashback, which is a really low level BIOS flash. But one thing I will say, and it's something that I will admit that even it wasn't made particularly clear to me, that you can't just download a BIOS on the website, stick it on your USB, and then it works. One thing that you do have to remember is the BIOS needs to be renamed, and this is something I think Asus need to make extremely flipping clear in the manual, and that should be if you want to use BIOS flashback, name it to this, because sometimes you can't use the tool, because let's face it, if you haven't got a system to, you've messed your BIOS up or you've got some issues or something, you haven't got a system that you can use the USB tool, because you need an operating system for it. Basically, it's actually a bit of software. So Asus, please, in the manual, make it ridiculously, like, for silly, stupid people in a rush like me, make it clear what you need to name this to, because the end users can't run off to their local PR like I can, who's absolutely amazing and answers my WhatsApps at like 2 o'clock in the morning, well, when he's awake or I've woken him up. But anyway, so yes, if you use this, for argument's sake, like the Strix X99 gaming, it was STX X99, and that was all you needed to call it. So the Rampage will be something different, I don't know, RMP10 or something like that. But anyway, massively off topic. You've still got PS2, which is great. There's plenty of us out there that still actually like these. This is your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, digital audio, and then at the back you've got your BIOS flashback button and then a clear CMOS button as well. Ah, right. So, can you see that plastic bit along the back of the back plate? And it's only down that one side, but there is a kind of like a half back plate that you can see. This board is incredibly heavy. It doesn't go right the way around the back. I mean, the plastic doesn't, but it is on the edge. Now that is another aspect of the RGB-ness. So you can change the LEDs down here, and you can get it to do it all like motion stuff. We can have it static, so you can set all the zones independently as well. So there's a lot of customization that you can do with this. Now, yeah, we will have to see what this looks like in the dark, in the built rig, and see what I think of it later. Now, whether you like the Rampage or not, it has become like an industry kind of benchmark where everyone does kind of not necessarily try and aspire to, but it does normally end up being the one that you want to beat. The technology is normally already there. They spend a lot of time trying to make sure it's a really good overclocker, and it benchmarks. It's normally it benchmarks incredibly well, and that's the amount of time that they spend on the BIOS. With this one, you can see that they've kind of paid a little bit more attention to aesthetics. They've gone more black. They've added kind of all those lights and stuff in. But it does carry a hell of a price tag, which is £499. Now, a £500 motherboard, you know, this thing is going to have to be all singing and all dancing. Although, to be honest with you, with something like this, you would expect it to have an expensive CPU in it anyway. But I'm going to reserve my judgment on it, obviously, until I've tested it. And the testing is going to be crucial, and I'm going to go and literally go looking for problems. And it's one of the reasons why we're waiting for a BIOS, is so that it can be at least be given a fair chance. But one of the things I will say is I'm not going to be using anything but a BIOS that's on the website. And after the dramas with the confusion, I should say, with a lot of the graphics card problems recently, it's something that we're going to be rolling out on all the tests, and that's across the board with all manufacturers. If the BIOS isn't on their website available to the public, we won't be testing with it, which is what we're going to be doing with this. Now, the 0601 is their kind of public BIOS at the moment, and it is the one that I've got for the Rampage, but it does make it a little bit different when there's not a great deal about it online at the moment. But we're probably going to give it another couple of weeks, have another chit chat with Asus, and then I may go like full retard with it and go absolute full bore with it and see where we go. I've got a lot of stuff that I do need to be doing for you in the meantime, and one of the things which you're probably going to be getting at some point next week is a review on the Strix 1070. But for now, at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with our first look at the Asus Rampage 5 Edition 10, or let's just call it the Asus Rampage 5 Black Edition, because that's what we all really think about it. But anyway, I'm going to be excited to finally get this one in the rig and testing. But for now, at least, with you, with your little donkey carrot, little teaser, little preview, this is me out. Ding! And that's just for the people that moan if I don't do a ding.